Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Joe Gaither Show on SpursCentral, hanging out on the San Antonio Spurs on SI YouTube channel. We're back for another week, and we have real information. We teased you last week about preseason, and there was some realness to NBA preseason, but now the season has started, so we're excited. We're excited to cover the San Antonio Spurs on SI. You can follow us at SAS on SI for all the great work. Make sure you're following the site lead, Matt Guzman. You can follow him at MattGZMan on the Twitter machine. He was all over the action last night as the San Antonio Spurs came up a little bit short in the season opener, 120-109 to the Dallas Mavericks. But that might be kind of what happens, what's expected against the defending conference champions. So let's get into it with our friend Matt Guzman. Once again, we encourage you to follow all his written work at San Antonio Spurs on SI as the season has 81 more games to go. Matt, you're ready for the grind. 81 games to go, one game down. How we feeling?
That's right. Yeah, it feels good. I'm glad to be in actual season with actual games that matter, that count toward the record to talk about. I think I'm ready to get going. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Excited to actually see the NBA on my TV this week. Watching a little bit of Bronny on, what was that, Wednesday? That they were on television. I believe it was Tuesday. And then fun to pull up a little YouTube and watch actual NBA action from last night. But it didn't go exactly the way that San Antonio Spurs fans wanted, losing to defending Western Conference champions. Just give me biggest takeaway from last night. I mean, obviously it's a little stacked matchup, a little obviously better team. But what's your biggest takeaway from night one?
Yeah, I think that there were a couple of players besides Victor Wembanyama that really stood out. And that was a good thing because last year it was a lot about, Victor's good. And as soon as he gets going, it seems like he'll be able to carry the team. And that's still going to be the case to an extent. He's still the best player. He's still expected to be, the guy that's going to help them win games and bring them to wherever they want to go. But there was a couple of players that really just stood out, in a game against a strong Mavericks squad that played a role and looked comfortable. And I think that will bode well for the Spurs, especially because, Victor didn't look great last night. And so for them to be able to, still show off like, hey, Julian Champagnie, Jeremy Sohan, they look good out there. We don't have Devin Vassell back yet. They should be able to feel good about, where they're at. And I think that was a good sight, especially because they weren't completely out of the game until about the third quarter. And so, for them to kind of hang in there and do that, and sure they lost, but at the same time they definitely showed that they look a lot better and a lot different than they did last season.
Absolutely. You just kind of set us up right there, and I want to talk about Victor's game and maybe his struggles before we get into some of these ancillary pieces and talk about what they did in night one. Victor last night, 5 of 18 from the floor, 1 of 8 from behind the three-point line. Great from the free throw line, 6 of 6. Just off in the shooting department. Do you think that it was something stylistically, schematically that the Mavericks were doing, allowing him to shoot from further away, or just maybe a bad night, an off night?
Yeah, I think it was just an off night. Teams are still having to adjust to Victor. I don't think they've completely figured him out just yet. And even when they do, part of what makes him so good and part of what's supposed to make him, as good as he is that it shouldn't matter. He should still be able to kind of break through these defenses and show off what he's able to do. It was definitely just an off night. He's looked a little rusty. He didn't even get too many reps during preseason. Very busy offseason, very busy summer. I think he's going to be fine. It was just a rough day for him, but at the same time, the Spurs can feel better knowing that there are other pieces on that squad that have looked strong. And so whenever Victor does kind of find his footing again, which should be much quicker than last season, they'll be good to go.
All right, so from last night's game against the Dallas Mavericks, you kind of outlined it. You got off to a really good start and almost, you got yourself almost to halftime with the lead. But I believe they went into halftime just down. What was that? 27 and 20. That's 49. Oh no, they were up by 2. They're up by 2 at halftime. And then it kind of gets away from them in the third quarter. They lose the third quarter by 9. They lose the fourth quarter by 4. To me, what I took away was it looked like the transition was a little bit of an issue, getting back into transition defense, a lot of easy buckets for the Mavericks in transition, and then obviously getting Klay Thompson. Their three-point shooting was very, very good last night. Are the Spurs going to have to make that a focus, transition defense this year, or is that just maybe first night, we're just figuring this out?
Yeah, I think that actually will be a focus. Especially you mentioned Klay Thompson. Defending the 3-pointer. The Spurs have not been a great 3-point shooting team over the past couple of seasons, and I think that that's something they're going to have to focus on the defensive end because, you know, early on in the game, Dallas was kind of struggling from three from the field. Period. There was a point in the game where they had the Spurs had a few points lead, and Dallas had missed 15 of its last 17 points or field goals. And so, it's little cold streaks like that where the Spurs were able to stay afloat. But then when Dallas kind of found its footing, started hitting threes, when Klay Thompson started lighting it up, and then Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and PJ Washington, a bunch of different players started hitting their shots, and all of a sudden the Spurs were sunk. And so I think defending the three and keeping especially if you know that this team has a bunch of weapons that can torch you from beyond the arc, you're going to have to make sure to pay close attention to them.
So let's talk about the guy that I'm most intrigued with for the San Antonio roster, and that's Stephon Castle. Where's my right there? 18 minutes, 8 points, 3 of 7 from the floor, 0 of 2 from beyond the arc. Got himself 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 turnovers. What'd you think of the rookie last night?
Yeah, I liked his performance. He wasn't supposed to come in and give 35 minutes last night, but in the time he did get, he looked good. Can you repeat what you said his shooting?
Yeah, he was 3 of 7 from the floor, 0 of 2 from behind the arc, 3-point line, 2 of 3 from the free throw line.
So that's what I was looking for. The 3-point percentage, only 2 shots, which is not bad. That's totally fine for him to be taking that shot. But that has been a concern and a question about what his 3-point shot, how strong it's going to look. He's definitely got some room to grow on that end, but he's able to get to the basket. And there's a couple of times where he was making some nice passes. He was getting himself open, and I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do last night. And he's only going to grow from here.
I think you guys wrote on San Antonio Spurs on SI about maybe Stephon Castle getting a little wake-up call, like, oh crap, I should be a sophomore at UConn, but now I'm in the big boy leagues. I might be guarding an NBA MVP anytime now. Just with that context, how do you think that really this offseason has gone for Stephon? Is he going to be ready to be that, hey, we'll give you 18, 22 minutes, try to see what you have, build your game, and let you go from there? Do you think he's ready to step into that kind of, not massive role, but medium-sized role and grow into some more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been one of the highlights of him is that he carries himself, and I think it was Zach Collins who said it. It was either him or Harrison Barnes. I believe it's Harrison actually said that he carries himself like he's 26. He's 19. He's about to turn 20 actually in a few days on November 1st, and so he's still very, very, very young. And that's as much youth as he has, he kind of carries himself like he's older than that. He understands that the position he's in is rare, and that he's getting this golden opportunity as a 19, 20-year-old to kind of go in and make an impact on a team that needs young pieces. And so I think that, I don't think that it gets to him, the pressure, and I think that he knows where he's going to have to be and what's expected of him. And I like that Greg Popovich kind of outlined it right from the start. Hey, you're going to have to be guarding some of the best players in the league. And I know you're just, a rookie or a sophomore in college by age, but, we got to get you ready for that. And I think he is ready for that challenge. And I think that's kind of what makes him so interesting is that, he carries himself well, he holds himself well, he understands what's expected, and he's ready to go out and give it.
All right, we started this conversation with Victor Wembanyama not having a strong night in the season opener, but I'll ask you, Chris Paul, 29 minutes, only 3 points, but you have 8 assists, 7 rebounds, 1 steal. You only turned the ball over twice. Not really a big impact on the scoring sheet. How do you I read that as, oh, Chris Paul had a real bad night as well. But then you see 8 assists, 7 rebounds. Okay. You've talked about what he's going to be asked to do this season. Is that or what he's going to be asked to do, just to just distribute the ball, or we got to get a little more scoring out of our point guard as well?
I do think that, some more scoring is going to be expected of him. I think that that's a fair assessment. But at the same time, doing what he did last night and getting those 8 assists and really making the offense look a little smoother, that's going to be key for him and his role. Even if he's not having a great shooting night, that's code for him to stop shooting and to start passing and getting the ball to his other players who are having good nights, whether that's Devin or Julian or Victor. And so I think last night is, obviously you would have liked to see a little bit more scoring from him, but at the same time, he got his 8 assists and that number is kind of probably where he's going to be, centered around if he does, if things go the right way. especially with a guy like Victor on this team. You can find him. They did have a lob connection last night, and I think that's something something to watch, and that will continue going forward. But at the same time, I think he did a great job last night. Everyone's still kind of getting settled, learning to work together. So for him to, on day one, just go out and throw out 8 assists and make that offense run a little bit smoother was good. I did enjoy seeing that.
All right, so the San Antonio Spurs are 0-1. We're not going to overreact to one night, but we're going to have an important week ahead. Really an important week ahead as you have Houston twice, Oklahoma City, the Thunder on Wednesday, and then Utah on Thursday before probably our next conversation on Friday. So you got 4 games coming up this coming week, 2 against the Rockets. I mean, everybody in the Western Conference. It's real important to get off to a real strong start. I'll start you with the Houston series, 2-game set, Saturday, Monday, 2 games with the Rockets. I am seeing the schedule, and I'm thinking that looks unusual to me. What do you think about Rockets back-to-back, not exactly back-to-back nights, but back-to-back opponents?
Yeah, I'm a fan of those 2-game series, whether it's Spurs on the road or Spurs at home, because it honestly gives you a little bit of it gives you a basis after the first one to go into the second one and say, here's exactly what happened. Same environment, same team, same matchup. So what things needed to be improved, and will they make those improvements the next time around, as opposed to waiting 2-3 weeks before they come back, or even a few months. Sometimes you see a team come into San Antonio and you don't see them again for the season. You have to go over there in April or in late March. And so I think it's cool to kind of get that right off the bat. I think that the first game will be huge to just kind of see how it goes. And obviously that Rocket squad is up and coming. It's a very good team. And so if there are things that you can easily outline as things to improve for the next time, you go a couple days and they come back and you play again. And that's where you really see if this team is built for, building on its mistakes, or if it's kind of fallen into the trap of being itself too much. It's an interesting one, but I'm excited to see, what happens in that first time and how they can kind of fix it come the second time.
Yeah, the Rockets and the Spurs are kind of in a similar position. Now, the Rockets don't have a Victor Wembanyama, but a lot of young talent with Houston. And obviously, they drafted Reed Shepherd, and they got a young man out of Auburn 2 years ago. Jabari Smith? Yes. How important is this 2-game set? Because these 2 franchises are kind of in the same boat, both wanting to fight for that play-in position.
Yeah, I think that, the Rockets maybe are a couple of steps in front of the Spurs at the moment. Like you said, there's no Victor over there, but they do have a good mix of veterans. I mean, they got Fred VanVleet over there. They have Jalen Green. They have, the newcomer, Reed Shepherd. They've got a lot of pieces on that team. And I think that, they're definitely a team that should be expected to kind of compete for that play-in spot. And so for the Spurs, it's kind of a test of, where are we right now in comparison to a team like the Rockets? When they play the Thunder, where are we in comparison to a potential number 1 seed in the Western Conference? Same with the Lakers and the Nuggets. All of those matchups are going to be kind of good testers and good evaluators of where the Spurs are. And I think to get the Rockets so early on, especially because they're on the younger end of things, I think it'd be interesting to see, can the Spurs kind of put up a fight? Last season we saw a back-to-back victory over the Phoenix Suns right at the beginning of the season, straight back-to-back on the road at that. They ended up getting both of those matchups. And so I think it was really at the time promising to see. And then obviously kind of, things started to fall off. But I think if the Spurs can kind of do something like that and prove that, hey, we're here to compete and we can compete with the Rockets, we can compete with this team and that team, I think they'd be in a better position than they were last season.
19 turnovers last night for the San Antonio Spurs, probably the biggest number that's glaring at me as I'm looking at the box score. What's it going to take? You see 4 from Shohan, you see 4 from Wembanyama. Everybody else kind of relatively reasonable. 3 from Champagnie. What's it going to take to protect the basketball a little bit better?
Yeah, I think it's just going to have to be putting the ball in the hands of your trusted ball handlers. Getting it to Chris Paul, letting Stephon Castle kind of take control. Even Victor Wembanyama a little bit. He's known to bring the ball up the floor to kind of facilitate the offense with the ball in his hands. I think for him, the biggest source of turnovers for him has always been when he's driving to the basket and they kind of strip him, as he goes up to do anything. He tends to lose it and then they go the other way with it. I think it's just going to be, kind of slowing things down a little bit, getting the ball into the hands of the right people so that they can facilitate and they can get passes going and they can make some ball movement happen without these arrogant passes and just kind of doing their thing to make sure that they're limiting turnovers and they can, take things into their own hands a little bit. And I think that's going to be that's going to be the biggest thing for them.
Obviously, a lot of news, a lot of was made about Klay Thompson leaving the Warriors and going to the Mavericks. So your initial takeaways watching him last night, obviously a pretty strong night. What do you think about the fit in Dallas?
I think it showed that, last night's performance is not going to be the way it is every night. He's not going to go out and shoot 6 threes and make them. I think he was 6 for 10. He's not going to shoot 10 threes and make them all or make 60% of them every night. But, I think for the rest of the West and the rest of the league watching, it proves that when Klay Thompson gets hot, he's still the same shooter that he was in Golden State. He's not as young. He doesn't have as fresh of legs, but, he can still shoot the basketball. And so, if you let him get hot, whether you're Denver or Boston or the Spurs or the Magic, it doesn't matter who you are. If you let Klay Thompson get hot when you face the Mavericks, it's going to be a long night, unfortunately. And I think that's just another weapon that they've added. They haven't really had. They haven't, besides Luka, but, Luka's known for everything. They haven't had another player on that team who's just lights out from three. And if you let him get hot, it's a bad night. And so I think that's kind of what he showed, is that he's capable and he's ready to do that with the Mavericks. He's going to kind of silence all washed and not the same guy. He's got to perform when the playoffs come. But, at the same time, I think it was a great first outing for him. I don't think it's going to be replicated night in, night out, but it's a very big reminder of what can happen or an example of what can happen if you let him get hot.
We're hanging out with Matt Guzman of San Antonio Spurs on SI. You follow him at Matt GZ Man on the Twitter machine. You follow all their great work at SAS on SI on Twitter as well. Okay, so night one, Greg Popovich after the game, always fun with the media, but really never one to overreact. What was his reaction to the loss?
Yeah, he was outlining the things that they needed to be better. He said, there's good things, there's bad things. There wasn't, he had some great things to say about Julian Champagnie, and that was great for me to see. I've loved Julian for a good while. So finally getting to see him take on this bigger role has been nice. But at the same time, they know it's just one game. They've got plenty more to go, and they've got a lot of growing to do. But at the same time, they know where they're at. And, they know that it's going to take some time to really come into their own, and adding Chris Paul, adding Harrison Barnes will help with that. But they've still got some things to do on their own, within the organization to make sure that they're getting to where they want to go.
Saturday night, 7:30, the Rockets will take the court, the Spurs will take the court again at home. This time it'll be the home opener against the Rockets. So you got 2 games at home against the Rockets, and you're at Oklahoma City, at Utah. What's the bare minimum? 2-2? Is it 1-3? Well, what should the Spurs' goal be this week?
I think they absolutely need to take one of those 2 games against the Rockets. I think that'll be huge for them. And I also think that it'll be important for them to, show that even if they lose that second game to the Rockets, show that they were actually in it. I don't think either of those games should be a blowout, and that should be their goal, is to make sure that they are not being blown out. But I think that they have a chance to show what they're capable of. And then, next week, whenever the Thunder come to town, or I believe they're going over there actually.
Yeah.
Whenever they go to Oklahoma City, that's going to be a big game, because the Thunder just manhandled the Nuggets without Isaiah Hartenstein. They're looking really strong again this season. And so, like I said earlier, it's just going to be kind of an evaluation game to see how do we stack up against a team like that, who's already figured it out, who's been where we are with these young pieces and just trying to make a splash. So now being a bona fide Western Conference contender, where are we in that process? Here's a good game against a team that's done it, and so I think that that'll be a good one to watch and just kind of see and compare. And for them, if they can pull out a win, if they can get an upset, that'd be huge. If not, I don't think anyone's going to be worried too much.
All right, so that's kind of our look on the Spurs. But, Matt, I want to ask you about a national story this week. On Tuesday, the Los Angeles Lakers beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 110-103. But 3 minutes left in the half, something like that, 4 minutes left in the first half. The Lakers were up by 14 or so, double digits, and in comes Bronny James. Everybody standing ovation. He plays 3 minutes, doesn't score, 0 for 2, 0 for 1 from behind the three-point line, 1 offensive rebound, no turnovers, no assists, all that, zeros across the board. Big moment. You kind of got to debate. Oh, it's the biggest. It's a great moment. Oh, father, son on the court. And then you still have the nepotism and manufacturedness, and this is fake, and you still have the detractors. So after we actually saw it. We've been talking about it all summer about Bronny and LeBron playing together. Now that you've seen it with your own eyes, what did you make of Tuesday night? They're a couple minutes on the court together.
Yeah, I think that, and it's funny because people are making such a big deal about the fact that they drafted him. I stand by the fact that, I don't know what you're so upset about because they picked him with number 55, the second to last pick in the NBA draft. I don't know who else you thought should be picked there that's going to turn into the next LeBron James, but at the same time, it makes sense that anything that LeBron does, he's basically going to be hated on for, and it's remained true even when he's trying to make history in a wholesome moment. Honestly, like it's cool. We get to witness history that's never been done before. As far as his game goes, he definitely needs a lot of work, and that's been apparent through the preseason, through summer league. Even last night he just hasn't gotten his shots to fall, but at the same time, he's just not ready. I think he needs to spend a lot of time over at Southway, and I think that's fine for him, to spend a season really learning and developing in the G League before he, is ready to take on any kind of rotation.
But didn't they say they're not doing that? Or have they changed their mind?
What they're going to do is essentially, they did. I don't believe they signed him to a traditional two-way contract. They signed him to a 4-year guaranteed deal, which is crazy. But, even if you're on a guaranteed contract, you can still be sent down to the G League.
Okay.
It just means he's not going to be like contractually obligated to split time with both.
Okay.
But I do believe he'll be spending a lot of time. Right. Absolutely. I think so too. I think they should send him down there and let him develop. There's nothing wrong with him not being ready right now. It's the number 55 pick in the second round. I think he's fine. He's got work to do, but it was cool to see that moment. And I think that I don't see all the hate. I don't understand what they thought they were going to get with number 55 that now they can't have because they have Bronny James, but I think he's going to be just fine. I think that, there's no better place for him to develop than in his dad's organization, because on top of all the coaches they have over there, he's got him to kind of, coach him through, and the two of them are definitely going to be spending a lot of time together.
Well, if he's going to get G League minutes, then that's going to soften my opinion of the whole situation. I thought that they went into the year where he's just going to get 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there, and I thought, what a waste of his much needed time.
I think right now they will be doing a little bit of that just to kind of get him minutes on the court with his dad, and for the narrative, and maybe he can learn some things from being, with the big times. But ultimately they want him to develop, and there's no better place for him to do that than in the G League.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun covering the NBA this year. 81 games to go for the San Antonio Spurs season. 0-1, but don't lose heart. It's a long season, and a lot will change with the ebbs and flows. Follow Matt Guzman at Matt GZman on the Twitter machine. Follow San Antonio Spurs on SI, SAS on SI on Twitter. You can just type in Spurs SI into your Google machine, and all of Matt's work will come up. Matt, have a great week. 4 big games on deck, and we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. That's Matt Guzman joining us right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central. We appreciate everybody joining us on the San Antonio Spurs on SI YouTube channel, checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We'll be back next week to talk about these 4 games and set up the following week right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central and SpursCentral.com and San Antonio Spurs on SI.